I'm willing to bet HBO is to thank for your favourite modern TV show. TV used to be comprised of light-hearted sitcoms and morally simplistic crime dramas, but today we have a minefield of binge-watchable, morally complex stories intertwined with discomfort, ambiguity, and the messiness of human nature.
Son of mine.
So, what changed? And how was this change largely carried out by one network via two TV shows? The Sopranos stripped down the human psyche, and The Wire unraveled the intricacies of a broken system. Together, these two HBO masterpieces completely broke down traditional TV conventions, entirely changed the television landscape of old times to give way to modern masterpieces like Breaking Bad and Succession, and explored morality on our living room screens in a way never done before. In 1999, audiences watched a mob boss juggle psychopath-level violence with midlife crisis neurosis and fell in love. David Chase, the writer of The Sopranos, introduced a number of themes that have since become the norm in modern dramas. The everyman anti-hero. Tony isn't just a kingpin, he's your neighbour, fretting over kids' grades and dinner menus one moment, ordering hits the next. We empathised with a murderer because his anxieties mirrored our own. Then there was prioritising character depth over plot mechanics. Instead of cliffhangers and big twists, we sat in Dr. Melfi's office, dissecting guilt like medical specimens. The writers of The Sopranos demonstrated how a therapy session can be as, if not more, gripping than conventional plot twists and suspense. Lastly, there was the longer arcs and serialization, the subplots, Carmela's ambitions, AJ's teenage crisis, Christopher's coke-fueled spiral. They wove across seasons. Viewers became invested emotionally rather than tuning in weekly for another reset of an episode of a cliché mob drama. By the finale's infamous cut to black, HBO had proven that viewers craved narrative risk. They craved unresolved tension, fractured protagonists, and moral vertigo. Then in 2002, The Wire arrived and made another statement. Forget the lone anti-hero, here's a city as your protagonist. Creator David Simon constructed 5 seasons, each a deep dive into a different institution. Drugs, docks, city hall, schools, and then the press. The Wire came with its own wave of innovations that would long last into modern TV. Institutions as characters, police departments, press rooms, port unions, they weren't backdrops. They were living, breathing entities with agendas. Viewers learned to analyze policies like plot points. Morality as societal consequence. Good and evil sprang not from individual choices alone, but from systemic pressures. Budget cuts, political grandstanding, educational neglect. When a detective bends rules, it's not because he's bad, but because the system incentivizes it. Then The Wire also demanded patience and intelligence. With dozens of characters and intersecting storylines, The Wire required viewers to pay attention, remember names, and piece together economic and political metaphors.
These are the pawns, and they like the soldiers.
Television became a puzzle, one where if a modern audience scrolled on their phone for a couple minutes, they might genuinely miss a crucial piece, even if there wasn't an explosion or dramatic music. By refusing neat resolutions, The Wire proved that audiences would embrace complexity if given the chance, and that a show could put societal structures on trial as powerfully as any documentary. Many of these tonal shifts existed in both shows. The longer arcs, the complex morality, the in-depth character explorations. Tony Soprano inspired generations of morally comprised leads. Walter White, Don Draper, Jimmy McGill. The Wire then showed how hard-hitting it can be to explore corrupt institutions like a media conglomerate or the White House. They both did this in a then revolutionary framework of serialized storytelling where there was no reset button at the end of the episode. They demonstrated the origin of the binge-watch model we're all so familiar with now, and they were the first shows to inspire the online theory crafting that now floods subreddits for every TV show on Netflix. Without these HBO classics, that showed investing in risky prestige projects could pay off in the millions, I promise you, we wouldn't have this golden age of streaming where the likes of Amazon and Apple constantly fight for the new morally complex story to pull in viewers. The network era of television, strangled by endless ads and the potential for mid-season cancellation, lacked the expressive freedom for longer, more complex story arcs. By popularizing the binge model of television, HBO showed networks that it was time for a different form of television consumption, one that allowed the viewer to sit uncomfortably in the stink of morally grey storylines and characters that made them question issues that mirrored real life. These sort of shows hit the soul harder because regardless of the world or setting, the issues explored are more human. Look around today's TV landscape and you'll see the aftershocks of the HBO earthquake everywhere. Character studies such as Mad Men's Don Draper, Succession's Roy family, the entire Breaking Bad and Better Call universe, they each owe a debt to Tony's cocktail of charisma and cruelty. Systemic epics like Chernobyl's bureaucratic horror, The Crown's institutional intrigue, or Ozark's money laundering machinery, they all trace back to Simon's lesson that systems can be protagonists in crisis. So remember, when you queue up your next prestige drama, remember, the moral complexities, systemic critiques, and serialized depths you crave were first forged by HBO. Forged with two equally important but vastly different hammers, The Sopranos and The Wire. They didn't just transform television, they demanded we become better viewers, more active viewers, more human viewers. And for that, our living rooms will never be the same.